Hi, my name is Natasha Trzynski, and I am the Primary Prevention Specialist with Safe Berks. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about sexual assault awareness and consent. Later on in the presentation, you're going to hear from your very own campus advocate, Stacy Jordan. What is consent? I want you to take a minute and think about the last time you talked about consent or asked for consent. Maybe think about the last time you saw consent represented on TV or movies. Maybe some of you could think about examples of consent, and some of you couldn't. And even though consent is an important topic of conversation, we are not talking about it enough. Consent is when someone voluntarily gives permission for something to happen or is agreeing to do something. Consent requires respecting boundaries. What is a boundary? A boundary is a line you don't cross without permission. Many of you heard the word boundary and you automatically thought of the boundaries between states. But just like those boundaries, we all have our own lines that we don't want crossed. Everyone has the right to set their own boundaries and to have those boundaries respected. Consent is about always choosing to respect the personal, mental, emotional, and sexual boundaries of others. There are 5 characteristics consent must have. It must be clear. Consent is expressed through mutually understood words and actions. The absence of a yes is a no. Silence does not equal consent. Only yes means yes. It must be specific. Saying yes to one act, like kissing, doesn't mean that someone consents to other acts. Anyone can change their mind at any time, which removes prior consent given. It must be voluntary. Consent needs to be given freely, without pressure or manipulation. Pressuring, manipulating, bribing, or threatening someone is not consensual. It must be ongoing. Consent must be given each and every time. Consenting in the past doesn't give consent in the future. This also means someone can withdraw their consent at any time. Just because you let someone borrow your car last week doesn't mean that they can come over and borrow your car anytime they want to, right? It must be given each time. You would expect someone to ask before borrowing your car. Same with consent. Consent must also be coherent. A person cannot consent if they are under the influence of drugs or alcohol, unconscious, sleeping, or under the age of 13. What is sexual assault? Sexual assault is any unwanted sexual contact or behavior made without consent. So this can include unwanted touching, fondling, groping, intercourse, and even rape. It does not have to include force, meaning the victim does not have to fight back. There are times when consent cannot exist, such as when someone is intoxicated by drugs or alcohol, if someone is sleeping or unconscious, or they're under the age of 13. It is considered sexual assault if the victim is unconscious or intoxicated. So some of you might be thinking, why does this matter? This matters because you know someone. 1 in 5 women and 1 in 16 men are sexually assaulted while in college. However, more than half of these sexual assault cases are not reported because college students don't believe what happened to them was serious enough to report to authorities. Of campus rapes, 7% were reported to any school official and 4% were reported to law enforcement. This means 90% of college sexual assaults never go reported. I wanted to take a moment to talk about the magnitude of the problem. Sexual assault on college campuses. We discussed that 1 in 5 women and 1 in 16 men are sexually assaulted while in college. Most campus sexual assaults occur in the first few weeks of freshman and sophomore years. 90% of victims know their perpetrator. This means it could be a friend, a roommate, a classmate, a teammate, a partner. It's not always the stranger who jumps out of the bush when you're walking alone at night. In about 75 to 90% of college campus sexual assaults, alcohol is always involved. And over 90% of college sexual assaults are never reported. If at a party you noticed someone who appeared extremely intoxicated, and it was obvious to you that they could not consent to sexual activity, but someone was still taking them to a bedroom, what could you do as a good bystander? As a bystander, it can be as simple to intervene by using one of the 3 Ds: distract, delegate, and direct. Any of these means to intervene can be used with the person being harmed or the person doing the harm. Distract. Maybe you go over and pretend you know the person and ask them to dance with you to take them away from the situation. Maybe you delegate by telling the person whose house it is. Or maybe you're a direct person and you say to the person being harmed, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" Or you can say to the person doing the harm, "Yo, they're obviously intoxicated. What are you trying to do? You know this isn't okay." It's important to remember that when being a good bystander, it's about doing what is comfortable for you. I may be a very direct person, and you may not be. That's okay. We are all comfortable with different things. If someone you know tells you that they've been sexually assaulted, you need to start by believing. You could say something like, "I believe you," or "I'm sorry this happened. I'm here for you." It is important to believe a survivor because if you are the first person they are telling and you don't believe them, they're less likely to seek services, like call police or go to the hospital or even tell anyone else. You should be supportive. You could say things like, "You can tell me as much or as little as you want. It's not your fault. I'm glad you told me. I'm so proud of you." Keep it supportive. Keep it simple. Your focus is on supporting the survivor, not determining exactly what happened. Ask how you can help. Let them know you are there for them, but always let them make the choice to accept your help or not. You could say things like, "What can I do to support you? I can stay with you tonight. Would that help? Do you want me to go with you to the hospital or police station?" Then you want to make sure you avoid why questions. Even with the most best intentions you may have, asking why questions could make the survivor blame themselves more than they already do. Hey everyone, I'd like to introduce you to your campus advocate, Stacy Jordan. Thank you for joining me today. When a student meets with you, there's a lot of questions. You go over a lot together. Can you tell the students a little bit about what the number one question is that you get and what they can expect?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So meeting with students on the 6 different college campuses in Berks County looks a little different at each college, but I can tell you that probably the number one question that most students ask me is this information going anywhere? Do you have to make a report? So first and foremost, I'd like to just establish that I am a confidential advocate, meaning that anything that a student shares with me is kept in that room. The only time that I have to break that confidentiality is if the student is under 18 years of age and reports that he or she feels like harming themselves or someone else. So that's just kind of upfront. And I just like to establish that so that they know moving forward, anything that they share is really just kept with me. And you know, that looks different too. Every person is a different place in their journey. So some of the information that they share with me may have happened 15 years ago, 5 years ago, it could have happened yesterday, but it doesn't matter to me. I'm there to support them wherever they are in that healing journey.
Now, when you talked about all the things that somebody can expect, you talked and mentioned that you go over some questions with them and options. Can you describe in a little bit more detail what are those options?
Sure. So the options vary, of course, as well. So every person, as I said, has a different journey. But I like to, it's very important to me to let everyone know what their options are moving forward. And sometimes that's just talking to a person, right? So some empowerment counseling, we talk about maybe whatever they feel that they want to share in their journey, and we kind of go from there. Some people would like to report to the authorities. So we talk about those different processes. And as a survivor, you have several options. One of them is reporting to the police and the criminal justice process. One of them is filing a protection from abuse order, and that's in the court system in Berks County. And the other, if it is a student-on-student act of violence, you have the option of reporting under Title IX. And that's a process that's held just on the college campuses, held by the college administrators. Some of the other stuff is really just being a sounding board. They come in and they talk to me and they tell me about, as much or as little about their story as they'd like. And sometimes I get them connected to other resources in the community. So again, it looks very different for everybody, but I am a good place to start. I can get you connected with the different areas of services available to a survivor.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Obviously, currently we're going through the COVID-19 health crisis, so I'm sure your services look a little different. Can you talk about how you're accommodating students currently?
Sure. So a student can reach out to me personally. I provide my cell phone number. I have an email address that comes to my cell phone, so that's available. I'm available to do some video chatting, whether that's on Zoom or otherwise. So all the services that I had mentioned are available by virtual services. So the only thing that I cannot do is I cannot accompany people in person to meetings or to court at this point until, we get back to some normalcy.
Right. Thank you. And thank you so much for joining me today.
All right. Thanks so much.
All Safe Berk services are free and confidential. We have a 24-hour hotline available in both English and Spanish. You can call 1-844-789-SAFE, or you can text Safe Berks to 20121. We have a counseling department that is completely trauma-informed and empowerment-based. We have legal advocacy and accompaniment to PFA, SVPO, and PFI. We have housing and shelter, so we have our emergency safe house as well as our bridge housing. There's the education and community outreach, which is the department I am from, and then we also offer internship and volunteer opportunities as well. As many of you are aware, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. This year's Sexual Assault Awareness Month campaign is I Ask, bringing the message that asking for consent is a healthy, normal, and necessary part of everyday interactions. For more information and resources, you can visit nsvrc.org/SAM or pcard.org/consent. Thanks for tuning in to this presentation on sexual assault and consent. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Stacy Jordan, your campus advocate. Her email address is stacyj@safeberks.org. Thanks again. Stay safe, everyone.